обязательно скажем, когда нужно включиться. Вижу, что наверное, это было сложно, это сложнее, чем Zoom, безусловно. Технологически это российская разработка, поддерживаем тренд на импортозамещение. Стараемся это все. Я хотел бы начать кратко. Повторюсь, давайте начинать наше мероприятие. Хотел бы кратко начать с освещения того, что у нас сейчас реализовывается, и перейти к основной теме малого форума нашей сессии. Буквально в двух словах хотел бы рассказать о том, какие у нас реализуются, как реализуются программы цифровой трансформации, пока еще она не завершена, но есть сей момент и данный момент времени нужно направление в именно естественно, здоровье. Буквально несколько слов о целях и задачах, которые преследуют достижение данной программы. Безусловно, бенефициарами цифровых изменений являются сегодня юридические лица, бизнес, сами сотрудники Росpatent, участвующие в представлении государственных услуг, региональные органы власти, региональные компании, все заинтересованы в том, чтобы эти изменения проходили максимально эффективно, максимально быстро и снижали нагрузку на взаимодействие с ведомством. Здесь хотел бы отметить такие ключевые цели, надеюсь, меня слышно? Слышно, да? Напишите, слышно. Да, спасибо. Спасибо. Ключевыми целями, конечно, здесь является снижение издержек заявителей, которые взаимодействуют с органами власти, с Роспатентом. Очень важно снизить для того, чтобы снижались издержки по внешнему контуру, очень важно снизить, конечно, издержки наших внутренних, поэтому здесь мы тоже работаем и реализуем ряд проектов. Но, как и всем нам, безусловно, важно и ценно соблюсти требования по импортозамещению. И, конечно, здесь мы ставим для себя амбициозные цели. К 2023 году уже все перевести на отечественные, хотя бы особо распространимые ПО. Есть у нас в деятельности Роспатента также контрольно-надзорная деятельность. И, конечно, мы тут всячески стараемся снизить путем цифровизации, создания информационных систем, необходимых для этого, снизить административную нагрузку на субъекты предпринимательской деятельности. И для этого уже есть предпосылки. В принципе, система к концу года будет готова. Ну и обеспечение надежности, безотказной работы, всего комплекса информационных сетей, всей ИКТ, инфраструктуры ведомства. Двигаясь вот к этим целям, нам необходимо преодолеть все сложности и решить очень важные задачи. Так мы обещали к началу следующего года предоставить себе возможность получать охранные документы, патенты, свидетельства, товарные знаки в электронном виде.
To get patents and other documents protecting your rights in electronic form by the beginning of next year. Another important step was to reduce the time that it takes to provide government services. It's a KPI for us. We have made significant progress in this respect, but we keep working on this. We keep implementing new information services, new platforms and solutions that will help us both reduce times down to zero on certain procedures, to reduce the time it takes of all the formal procedures, of all the formal tests due to automation of this work. This is going to be one of the tasks that we do our best to achieve. And furthermore, we need to open a chance to interact with the agency using modern online systems, make applications online,
Ну и завершить все, как уже я сказал раньше,
to
электронным
have
шагом.
everything
Дальше
carried
мне
out as
хотелось бы
quickly as
сказать
possible and to receive an electronic
буквально в двух
protection
словах
document at the
о
end.
о
And
той
now I'd like to
архитектуре,
cover
которую мы
the architecture
реализуем в рамках
been
ведомственной
implementing
программы,
as
начали
part
реализовывать
of
ее
our agency
в
project.
рамках цифровой экономики
We started implementing it as
в
part of the
2020
digital
году в большей
economy
степени.
project in
И
2020.
сейчас все эти мероприятия у нас погружены в рамках базового
And now all
сценария
these steps
ведомственной
are
программы
part of the
цифровой
basic
экономики.
scenario of the
22 проекта
industrial digital
реализуется,
economy project.
включается
We have
11
22
государственных
projects
систем,
online,
2
11
цифровые
government
платформы,
systems,
всего систем 15, из
forums,
них 11 государственных информационных систем,
and the
2
government
цифровые
systems,
платформы
15
и набор
platforms in
различных
general. There's also
сервисов,
a whole set of various
которые позволяют,
services
опять же, упростить работу с
to
заявителями. Плюс
simplify
инфраструктурные
with our
решения,
applicants.
они у нас разбиты на внешние и
So
внутренних
solutions,
отроках, здесь на
both external and
слайде представлены,
internal,
которые
as you can see on this
позволяют
slide.
понять, как взаимодействуют данные
This will
блок,
help
данный
you to
стек
understand
между
stack
тем, что видит заявитель, и то,
functions.
как у
This
нас
is
внутри
what
это
lies
отрабатывает.
between
И тот, и другой
what the
контур
applicant sees and
мы
what we do
трансформируем
internally.
в рамках представления
And we've been
государственных услуг.
transforming both
Сейчас все
as part of
системы
this
находятся на
digitalization
этапе
process.
бета-тестирования.
Now
В
this
нем
all undergoes the
участвуют в
beta
основном
testing
компании,
stage.
игроки на рынке, крупные на рынке интеллектуальной собственности.
Big
Это
players in the
компании
IP market
патентно
are involved in
проверенных.
this.
Плюс сейчас активно мы
Furthermore,
реализуем и
while we're
тестируем уже
implementing
интеграцию с московским инновационным
integration with the
кластером.
Moscow
И
Innovation
должны
Cluster
запустить в
quite
ноябре
actively.
месяце
And coming
несколько
November,
систем
we're going to launch a
уже
number of
в работу
systems
для того, чтобы предоставить
that will
резидентам
help residents
кластера
of the cluster
полный функциональный доступ к нашим
get full
ресурсам по
to
подаче
all our
заявок,
resources, to be able to
по
submit
передаче
applications,
прав,
to
продаже
be
прав, покупке прав
to buy
и, безусловно, взаимодействие
rights,
в
and to
онлайн-формате
interact
в
online
системе нашего онлайн-Роспатент
with
называется.
Rospatent.
Чуть остановлюсь кратко
Now
на
I'd like to dwell very
ключевой
briefly
системе, я бы сказал,
on our key
поисковой платформе
system, the search platform of Rospatent.
Сейчас подгрузится этот слайд. Да, которая
Right.
для нас является
We find this platform a flagship product.
предназначена в первую очередь
The aim of this platform is to encourage, to accelerate innovative activities in Russia
предоставлению всем
by providing everybody, all the interested persons
заинтересованным
interested,
мировой базы более 150
access to a huge global database to the entire global patent fund. Nobody else has such a resource at the moment.
приближается
Those who are coming closer to this,
по актуальности даже данного ресурса
still
велика вот
their resources are
актуализирована.
not up to date.
Сейчас в него загружено
The up-to-date data massive here, it already contains about 50 million units of information. This resource is designed to serve everybody, but in particular those who want to understand to what extent their invention is innovative. This system will offer,
очень оперативно.
it will work very briefly, very quickly, and it will be possible to use this tool professionally
В целях предварительной оценки
for preliminary assessment
ценности и важности
of the
данного решения. Мы
particular solution for protection. We pose very high requirements to this solution. This is why I said it is a flagship for us. So the requirement is to support at least 10,000 users in peak stresses, in peak times, and to take not more than 1 second to do the search. In my opinion, indicators like this will transform conventional ways to work with patent documents from a standard research to a whole intelligence analysis, where the user will be able to use this tool to do very quick analysis close to assessing the solution for. Next, I would like to point out another system. I hope you can see the presentation. This is a product which you know, which many of my colleagues would already know. I already told you about it. in a number of events. This is a platform that covers the turnover of rights on IP items. It's a breakthrough solution which helps to reduce the time it takes to and register agreements for rights handover down to zero, either handover or licensing of IP rights. Previously, you had to exchange all the paper copies of such agreements in electronic form, but you had to meet face-to-face and to sign these agreements yourself or using IP lawyers, analog-based process. Now we have digitalized it in the best possible way. All the contracts, all agreements are carried out at your desktop, at home, or in your office. And agreements and contracts signed with Rospatent without previously, even in accordance with the statutory months. Now we have exerted enormous efforts to reduce this offline process 1 month, maybe even 2 weeks. An ability to provide your intellectual very quickly. When you can commercialize it without any delays, this is even better. So this system is also being tested at the Moscow Innovation Cluster. And we're going to launch the system coming November. Another digital solution that I would like to discuss with you. Maybe it doesn't have a social effect which is as important, but still, we think it's quite important. We carry out about 40 audits a year, but they're quite comprehensive. They're carried out in high-tech sector. Quite often these sectors are closed. We analyze developments there. So the solution which you can see here, which is now under testing, and it will be launched by the end of this year for our employees, is a system for control over IP activity results. We will be able to generate electronic instructions. We will be able to records electronically and to issue instructions in case of any violations of IP rights. And to upload it to statistical observation in accordance with the government. So this solution will also replace many analog-based procedures. Another important element of the future digital infrastructure is the government information system. This system will help to carry out preliminary expert assessment and preliminary research and to learn more about images, which is quite a sensitive area. It will help us to realize whether a particular market is taken, whether a particular color solution is already being used, whether a particular trademark is, and then this information will be generate your own unique a trademark or a product of industrial design to have it registered with the Rospatent. Access to everybody will be open by mid-quarter. Search will be open, and by the end of this year, provide access to search by graphical elements industrial samples, which will also be implemented in the using cutting-edge solutions based on artificial intelligence. One more thing I would like to cover very
Очень кратко.
briefly.
Вот такие результаты мы ожидаем
These are the results that we
получить к
expect
концу
to get from digital transformation
2023 года. Многие из них,
by the end of
уверен,
year
будут достигнуты
2023.
уже в этом году.
Results will be achieved by the end of this year.
Дополнительно я бы хотел отметить, что
Furthermore, I would like to point out
с точки зрения цифровой
that
зрелости
with respect
Роспатента
to
к 2023 году
digital
мы планируем
maturity of
включить,
Rospatent,
ну,
we
эта
expect,
диаграмма, это еще лепестковая диаграмма,
well,
еще не
this
дорисована,
diagram is not
как нам хотелось бы, чтобы она выглядела, и мы
has not reached
просто
yet the stage which we would like
в
it
графике, а делом
to
хотим
reach,
доказать, что есть
but we would like
цифровая
to
зрелость.
prove that
Контрольно-надзорной деятельности потянет и технологическая
the
зрелость
digital maturity
с
will reach all the necessary
интеграцией с
levels
государственными информационными
that it will be able to integrate with government information resources, and it will reach the level required,
равномерно и сбалансировано.
and this hexagon.
Благодарю вот за такой
Thank you
краткий доклад.
for
Я не хотел
an
много
opportunity to make this
времени
brief
отнимать,
report.
я его
I didn't
отнял.
want to take much of your time.
И сейчас хочу
So
уже
now
перейти к
I would like to
наших секциям, к нашему малому форуму, к
proceed to
дискуссии,
begin our small forum
где
and to start our discussions
помимо того, что мы обсуждали, я рассказывал про
so that we
горизонт
can
23 года,
discuss.
взглянуть на
Just told you about
горизонт чуть
the
дальше, на
outlook until year
2020
2020.
год.
Now let's look a bit further down the road until year
И это связано
2030.
в первую очередь с тем, что в июле вышел указ президента о национальных целях
The president
развития
of
Российской
Russia
Федерации,
issued
в котором мы были
a decree on the aims of last July, and one of the aims is digital transformation. So we would like to understand today how you see this aim. You could share your short-term views, but also long-term views on implementing this national goal. And it would be great if we could also look at what, in your opinion, the transformation of our agency could look like in the distant future. What technologies we could use as a basis for implementing this solution, and how we could accelerate our activities maybe with other businesses and other to meet with success. Since we have an excellent composition of speakers today, I suggest that we begin, that we give floors to our speakers. I'd like to start with question number one, which is, in my opinion, most relevant. We have many people from the government sector today. So, question to my colleagues. How do you see, or can you share your experience? Do you know how digital transformation in this sector should be implemented in the short-term perspective until 2023? And if possible, it would be great if you could also carry out, outline the prospects until 2030. Ask to speak. Please, any of you who would like to speak, you're free to do so. Anastasia Bondarenko, I see you're online. Yes, hello. Yes, Anastasia, glad to see you. Thank you. I'm on sick leave. I'm not at the office. Yury, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this very interesting conference. It's not quite my functionality, and maybe I'm not competent to say anything interesting, but still, I enjoyed listening to a report about your achievements and your developments. And from your presentation, I saw that this is something which has a clear vision. I think this is important because when you have a vision, but when this vision doesn't have a roadmap, when this vision is unclear, whereas stand only chances to achieve all the aims. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Yeah, and we can hear you. And thank you very much for this compliment. So, very briefly, right? Not to take much of your time. We at the Ministry of Energy are also developing a ministerial program for digitalization. But we have a very special composition of users. It's the so-called professional entities. We don't have individuals, only legal entities. So is aimed to provide for interaction between the government and businesses. Our information, the GIS for the energy sector should become a one-stop shop for government and business to meet. As regards our functions, we can see how we can transform them. A very brief example. For instance, the fact that with particular chemical properties is being extracted, to be able to export this, to be able to get certain tax benefits. Companies keep submitting various requests, various papers. We respond to these papers, but we know where to move in this respect. Overall, we need to synchronize these systems, our information systems, create personal accounts, to create a electronic passport for each company, an energy company, an extraction company, etc. So in this respect, it's quite clear what the transformation is easier for people to work times, etc. So this is not so interesting. But one more thing, with their permission. When I was getting prepared for this event, I talked to our clientele that talk with Rospatent, patent lawyers. I asked them, guys, can you tell me where your pain point is? What is your most painful emotion? What you would like the professional community to change? And they raised 3 painful points. 3 apply your efforts. Pain number 1, obtaining information. Pain number 2, paper. And so very briefly about each of them. Pain number 1, obtain information. It turns out that there's a great demand on the part of the patent law and all interested persons to obtain information automatically. Information about the change of in the status of an intellectual property item. Today, for instance, you need to enter the number and to watch a particular, whether it changes or not. But when you're a lawyer that many cases, or when you own hundreds, thousands of various IP items, it is very difficult to check every single number. You need to train personnel online. But if you offer an online service in the form of subscription, charge the system to check particular numbers, this, in my opinion, will be very good, and there's so interested persons will be clearly able to discuss a lot, maybe professional market players, maybe other people, but Rospatent will work out its criteria. The has a similar product. They say this system is called Moderator. It's quite interesting, but I didn't have enough.
Second our pain, this is about an application through the public entities, and further interaction. It will be done in hard copies, so it would be an electronic application, but further inquiries and responses are done on paper, and we'd like to streamline that, and I see that this is on your agenda. And number 3, this is about a very interesting story. Let me look into my notes. The annual maintenance of all the patents for the useful models, and there's a problem that they fail to pay a fee very often. Actually proceeds from the fact that the rights holder just forgets to do that, and the person forgets to pay a fee and therefore would lose for a certain amount of time his or her rights. Should there be an online service, a warning system which would warn you that the deadline is coming, just like, for instance, actually, if I get an appointment to the doctor and a day before the appointment, I will get a notice that tomorrow I have to go to the doctor, to see the doctor. I think that it would be the very right direction of the transformation. The most useful thing is that Rospatent, just like other IP agents, interact with the business and Here, the professional feedback. The professionals will always be ready to identify the areas for improvement. What is left is just to hear them and every success in their work. Thank you so much. Really, these are the very painful things. Actually, you pressed these painful points, and I felt this pain. But the digital transformation is called for in order to digitalize, where we have the human factor, to remove these painful things where the and reminders and notifications are very much needed. These are the services which are going to be implemented in 2021 when we complete our digital economy cycle. We actually follow our baseline scenario. And quite recently we interacted with Minkomsвязь, or the Ministry of Work Communications portal. We got an assurance. We were reassured that these services will be full-fledged, not just that you apply digitally, but also the interaction would be digital. So that means that we will have a full-fledged monitoring of the maintenance. Thank you so much. And saying that, I would like to call on Andrew Pridankin. I see that he has joined us. Andrew? Yes, thank you so much for this kind invitation. I'm very glad to see you. I wish you to recover very soon, but back to the agenda. I'd like to touch upon the following question. I'm working for the Russian Property Agency, and one of my objectives register of public property, the treasury assets, and the shares held by different joint stock companies. We have to be in charge of. At the same time, there is a whole of the register which is dedicated to the IP objects. At the same time, the level of digitalization which has been presented here will draw an example. Some federal agency would develop kind of a program, certain system, federal informative systems, etc., etc. And we do not know more about that than we. So the cost incurred by the setup, if it goes up, if it doesn't go up, actually, then in the same. And this potential doesn't allow us to say whether it is good or bad, whether it is protected or not. And we are very much interested in the accounting statements, and therefore, Yury, I have the following question to you. Whether the IP objects which are great money have any application, and I'd like information not from the rights holders of that code or of that information system, but for instance I'd like to get the data from your agency. It would be just great to get a link to your resource instead of or a description of this financial asset. This is the very first block of questions which we may discuss. And we have a wonderful term. Everyone is developing a program for computers, and these softwares actually would be comprised of letters, Latin letters, and digits. Who actually is the owner of that software or that program? For instance, if we change the names of all the variables, Instead of A, for instance, would call it A12. Will it be the to identify the copyright of the software, for instance, so something which I fail to understand. This is what I'd like to discuss. Well, excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your in Russia, we certainly have such a problem, and many of us face spring. There are certain gaps in the legislation, and Rospatent, in essence, just put the stamp, just like a wiper proof. And for instance, whatever you want, you may just somehow deposit or place on a deposit if you want, and this is connected, which is checked and verified whether there is a code, and certainly the agency Rospatent deploy this software on its stand, doesn't check whether it works or not, so we do not do the search authors of similar results. Actually, it is not available in our legislation, and we just do the depositing or lodging, and we confirm the author. Back to the first block of your questions. Our first clients are major Russian IT companies, the biggest ones, such as 1C, which have millions of license agreements and different versions of the software. They actually register all their software and all the versions of the software in Rospatent according to the effective legislation. And certainly we'd like to get in touch with the Ministry of Digital Development. And I have no doubt that the Ministry of Digital Development have to interact with the public authorities. And there is an attempt to set up a public information system which would be checked as to its viability, as to the availability of different versions, adequacy of the money spent on it, or costs incurred, and this all would be included into the digital budget, and this is reflected in this data collection. These data being accumulated are necessary for the registration of the software, and it has to be sponsored by the public funds. In that case, we would assure the quality of what is being deposited by us. And further on, actually, we may protect that on the Russian Federation. The legislative norms, when the software is being deposited, rights would belong to this author as long as it is not approved. So that's a very elusive that actually deposited, but if it's word that this software belongs to a different developer, rights holder, his or her rights. Back to our cooperation. So for you as the property agency to get an extended information, notice broad information about a software which is being registered with us, we'll either actually have to overload our technical committees and after that actually we'll provide an opportunity to connect your platform to our results. But unfortunately actually We have not done that, and once we have the SMEF system being set up, we'll do that, and it will be more legitimate. Andrew, you want to comment on that? Yury, still I have a question. I listened to your answer. There is such, actually, saying that you have to eat an elephant in pieces. We have a register of domestic software. Probably the very first efforts can be done in the direction of this register, because actually there are different solutions there, and then aimed at promoting the regional authorities to use that without necessarily reinventing the wheel. And for instance, the patents which are not protected may emerge in that situation, and in that case, the situation would be quite awkward. I suggest that at the first stage we can start with this register. This is my suggestion. Thank you, Sadler, I support it. I just called the Ministry for Communications, unfortunately. We don't see any. But it would be just great if we could, in such close contact, do something. What else? I do not know who. Who else wants to speak up? Thank you, Andrew. And I'm passing the floor to Anatoly Beler. Are you with us? Yes, I'm with you. I'm there, online. Well, look, actually, I didn't prepare my notes, and my experience of working with Rospatent is limited to my trying to patent a device, and actually it was patented by another guy. Actually, I failed to find a way out of your puzzles. And patent, in my opinion, this is a tool of enforcement rather than a tool of coercion rather than a tool of protection. At the moment, I am involved in the digitalization of my structure. I do think that we have similar objectives, and this is applicable to everyone. Let's speak about the proactive nature of the services. So we have invented so many rules for the users that not always were knowledgeable about that. 20 years ago, I failed to get my device patented, and I actually was tripped by the fact that I failed to prove that this device was not patented before. I think that in my case, now when digitalization of the economy has reached the modern heights, the patenting or the rights protection should be very proactive, and at the same time it have to be intuitively understandable. In my field of oversight over technological objects, we sometimes run into the situation that we find some breakthrough disruptive technologies which cannot be legally substantiated because the property rights have not been executed, because time taken to register the rights prevents us from catching up with the more rapidly developing economies. If you remember Ladygin with his bulb, and Russia lost its patent for the bulb, incandescent lamp. I would like to share your optimism regarding the Ministry of Communication. We all hope that very soon to communicate to our residents and citizens. I hope that our colleagues from the Ministry of Communications would not let us down, and this function would be implemented. Back to the application. At the moment, we actually run into the problem that implementing and deploying digital technologies on the stage, from design to the implementation, we run into the situation that many technological solutions in the era of digitizing of the processes which were developed in the Russian Federation are not patented in Russia, are not protected anyhow, but at the same time there are lots of foreign solutions at the hardware which fortunately or unfortunately are foreign made and they are protected by a foreign patent, but at the same time for us, as for the overseeing agency, its legal status is not clear.
So our interaction aimed to obtain information. I would like to support the previous speaker in this respect. That information on the patent cleanliness, on the legal status, etc., would be better to receive from a single government authority, which is Rospatent to us, rather than ask for this as part of a heap of papers. You may remember that previously we didn't have copiers, for instance. So nobody would ask for a copy of passport, but today nobody would talk with you without a copy of your ID in the government agency. So we have generated a whole heap of papers ourselves. So I encourage that we synergetically harmonize our activities and we all move towards a horizontal exchange. And I wish you, Rospatent, to show us the way so that we can catch up with you. Thank you. Anatoly, thank you very much. May I continue? May I not let you go because you represent an agency that protects, that defends. I would like to continue on this note. I began by saying that we are based on state-of-the-art technologies, that our program includes all the areas, all the end-to-end technologies, blockchain, IT, etc., etc. But maybe what would be your ideas for technology stacks for you? You're an IT expert, so in this capacity, what areas in technology can you see which are applicable to government services, which can be used? I know that I didn't ask these questions in advance, but maybe just off the top of your head, something that comes to your mind right away. Well, AI is indeed. Oh, well, no, I'm quite cautious about AI and all that, but at the same time, we've been doing this very slowly. We've been introducing this algorithm. First, there's a proper thing, individuals. I think that AI can be of help in respect to check effectively the quality of tests are passed in universities, etc. So, AI is indeed part of our technology development. As regards Rostechnadzor, as for technical part, you know, I think that all the right answers are the same. We are now following the path which the tax authority has already gone, and some other government agencies. We've been centralizing our hardware costs. We encourage all users to use unified cloud solutions, if I may, because they're more reliable and they're more capable of working on a 24/7 basis. Clearly, an electronic document is not a PDF file, not an MS Word file, but a set of data. So we're now proceeding from a set of papers, sheets of papers. We have tons of them, hundreds of kilograms, even tons of papers. And we're proceeding to from a format of scanned documents or the MS Word documents to structured databases. This is the aim that I would like to reach next year. And in general, I'm convinced that paper is just a means of reflecting information. This is why we need to go beyond recording information to working with pure data. This is why I think that, again, if we come back to Rospatent,
очень много технологических
a
вещей,
lot of
которые
technology
для, я лично
questions,
considerую
which,
как и
in
у
my
нас.
opinion, like with our agency, with the
Всего лишь
Russian
облегчение двух
Agency
вещей.
for
Это
Technical
облегчение
Supervision, serve two
работы
purposes.
с нами, наших
They need to
визави, поднадзорных,
simplify
агентов,
our
да, то
work
есть
with our
населения, юридических
vis-a-vis
федераций,
with
с
the
одной стороны.
individuals
А
and
с другой стороны,
entities in the Russian Federation on
обеспечение
one hand, and on the other hand,
качественные
they need
государственные
to
услуги,
ensure
то есть
good quality
инструмент
of
для наших
government
сотрудников.
services. They should serve as a tool to
Когда
our
сотрудник
employees.
государственного
Whenever
органа
an
имеет
officer
маленькую
of a government
зарплату, у него
agency
должны быть
has a low
очень
salary,
эффективные
they
инструменты
should
для
at
его
least
работы,
have a very
когда он будет
effective tool of
качественно
their work.
работать.
Then they will
Понимаем
work effectively.
соотношение
Because we see this
стоимости
relation between the
компетенций человека, да,
expert
и
assessment,
вот
the
чем
person's
больше автоматизации,
expert
тем
level
больше
and the
денег
level
капитализации
of
бесплатно.
their automation. The lower the automation level, the lower the quality of expert assessment.
Мы идем к
Maybe a
тому,
single approach, but
чтобы
this is the way it is.
максимально
So we've been moving towards automating, digitizing all recurring operations as much as possible. The so-called routine operations, if I may. So all the routine operations of an officer, all routine operations between an individual and the government should be digitized and should be made easy to use, proactive services. So that, like this, so that we proceed not from the formulation, if you don't know the law, that does not relieve from your liability. No, it should be the other way around. We wave the flag, we show these street signs, and now you should really start complying, because you shouldn't have even an opportunity to not to comply. If a person is an expert, a person finds it easy to live. If a person is not an expert, we should give the person an opportunity to find an easy life as well. And then we will be able to hire people who are not experts and still to offer good quality work. Yes, I wish you full-scale digitalization. You know, I'm in favor of digitalized officers. You should work like a robot. You take a paper, you look at it, whether it complies with laws or doesn't. Then we don't need the big brother. I hope I have given an answer. Thank you very much for this very informative answer, and I think we can use it as a base to continue our discussion. And now I'd like to Yury with this question. Basically, the question is of the same nature. The digital maturity, in your opinion, will it take a long time for you, for us, for all of us, until we reach the digital agency, until we have digitalized all our routine operations and key business processes that are currently in the way, currently impact labor costs of our agencies, prevent us from developing effectively, that take so much of our time? Thank you, Yury. Thank you. I would like to welcome all the conference participants, my colleagues. I'm glad to see all of you. Rospatent has been one of the key agencies in the past years that has been developing quite actively, dealing quite seriously with digitalization. They've been quite serious to clean their data, to make their data good quality. We all see this, we all realize this. We're very glad that this is also carried out at a very good international level. We, in turn, also hope that we will have an opportunity to obtain our data in digital format. For instance, we have government environmental impact assessments. We have to track this, and I'm sure that we will find common ground in this respect. Now, as regards digital transformation, yes, my colleagues have touched upon this issue already, and Anatoly has also mentioned we're very close with them in this respect. We are involved in practically the same operations in slightly various directions, but we do work very closely. So our priorities in this respect are to digitize and to digitalize. Our priority is to work with the IoT, with big data. Clearly, we focus in particular on this very serious work which is underway, which has been underway for many years to reform the supervisory operations. And in particular, we discuss how to help our government ranger, government controller to track and control all the parameters of subcell users remotely. This topic is quite relevant today. It is very important to subcell users, but also to us. And we would like to get into the digital area right now. We would like to digitalize the supervisory area of our works to provide opportunities to remotely control everything. Because we have a lot of paperwork, this is mandatory, and Anatoly has mentioned this. We have tons and tons and tons of paper. And unfortunately, this is true. We all have to draft agency plans for digital transformation, and our main priority in this plan for transformation is to go beyond paperwork. Digitalized reporting will help us to carry out supervisory activities without attending companies offline. This is priority number one to us. We intend to start very actively, starting from next year, to begin using AI. It will also be part of our supervisory activities. This will be both related to supervision, but also to control over industrial waste utilization. These are the top priorities that have been identified by our President and by our Prime Minister and by the government. And there's no other way we are going to develop. I've been working on this very closely, and we hope that our colleagues will help us in this respect, and that we will work in one single technology chain, and this will help us to reach all the aims and goals that we have set for ourselves. So this is very briefly our main steps that we're going to make. I'm ready to take your questions. Yury, thank you very much. You have raised a very important issue in your report, that we work together, where the digital special forces that have to solve this very important task of transforming government services. And in view of this, I have this question. I would like to ask this to Maria Shaklaruk. I'm curious to know cooperation between agencies. In what respect can this offer good opportunities to implement the plans for digitalization? Maybe this contact between agencies. You know, I would look at it from a broader perspective. I believe that the problem or the question of interdepartmental contacts is broader than that, because you start working together on certain projects, you start working well, projects are meeting with success, but as Anatoly has mentioned and others, you know, for government agencies, they still face a problem of insufficient competences. They cannot hire data analysts, data engineers, and bring the data which they have one way or another to the format which would be more applicable for assessment to formulate government agencies, government policies. And in this respect, I think that there's a great potential which lies in the following story. We need not just to launch inter-agency projects, but cross-industrial projects, projects between the universities. For instance, we launched a project a short time ago. It wasn't launched by the Academy of Presidential Services. I'm director of the Autonomous Non-Commercial Organization, which was established precisely to deal with government services, to help governments to transform. So, one of the projects is infrastructure of research data. But what we're discussing here, and you also mentioned this, it is how the curve of data value grows if you start using this. In the current state of affairs, even if data has been collected and digitalized, it quite often stays at a particular agency. In particular, on the interface, this data may be not confidential, but then it is not government secret either. So this data is stored somewhere. Sometimes this data is not improved, and it turns into waste sooner or later. So what we're trying to do now is to launch a project where universities, together with agencies, with data owners, would work together. Those who own these data will be able to work with universities, and when access to this data is provided, at least at the level of research teams, what we can see now that many research teams work with data internally to understand what this data can be about, how this data can be improved by integrating with other sectors. They form data sets from this data, which then can be used to build prognostic models or to look for explanatory factors. And as this data is used and reused, as this data is enriched, as scientific publications appear, the value of this data grows significantly. If at a certain point in time this data becomes available to business, then this data becomes even more valuable. Yes, this is how we have conceived this project. This is where we're trying to move. Some of this may, at a later stage, be discussed with the Center for National Projects and with other colleagues. Some of this can be implemented by government agencies. Anyway, pilot data sets with some of the partners are used to make all these steps to identify data, to evaluate the quality of the data, to harmonize the data, and to do preliminary analysis to be able to use this data later on. So, this is how it looks. The most important story, it's kind of a sandbox. The most important thing we would like to achieve is to start this interaction between agencies, to show both parties the benefits of this joint work, which would be free for both parties, both sides. We'll also have grant supports to researchers, but this is going to be free of charge for government agencies, but also free of charge to researchers. And our key tasks in this respect, in this project, are listed here. And again, it is important to move towards each other, so that government agencies can create project labs, they can find assistance in solving tasks that they have, while at the same time promoting Russian science. This is also quite important, because previously, there are things which are related to higher technologies, but in social sciences, in many other aspects, an ability to publish an article is always related to access to good data, and in this respect our country is sometimes lagging behind. And in this aspect, it should be quite an interesting project for where Rospatent could offer data sets which could be used to search for some interesting data, something which is not known yet about our researchers, about the potential.
And this might be very interesting. Next slide, please. This is in a nutshell what we are doing. We are working in terms of providing technical access. On our platform, you can work user virtual machines, getting familiar with them, and then seeing whether the result is interesting for the scientific publication. We are developing legal support because a kind of a legal zoo which takes place there is still relevant, and for every data set you have to take a unique solution. We have developed checklists which would help you to look through the data sets, somehow checking the legal aspects. And I think that would be useful for the professional community. And the last slide is about the contact data. You can skip that. It is available on the site. And data.in.ru, you are invited to visit it. At the moment, actually, it functions. We have deployed the catalog with the 3 modes of access available there. You can see how it all works. Our main objective for the next big release, which we plan for the mid-November, to show to everyone the advantages for the researchers and for the data owners. And I do hope that very soon we'll see the emergence of the very first data-driven surveys. Concluding my remarks, why actually I'm doing that project, because I think that we are lacking an ecosystem of friendly and win-win cooperation between the departments, between universities, when every academia would work only with some core industry, and we actually not very much knowledgeable about the universities and academia. This is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you. For many of us, I think, you act as a kind of expert, real expert and guru, and whatever we say, we note, and we try to live to your expectations and to prove what you say to perfection. Especially, this is important for me as a person who is responsible for digital transformation in Rospatent. Such an area of development is clearly very crucial for me, and it is very interesting for everyone. The data centers which we're setting up, they emerge in different projects in the artificial intelligence area. These projects are very demanded for. And to continue this discussion, I'd like to give the floor to our foreign colleague from the European Patent Office, Scott Stanley. Over to you. Please tell us about how you develop the technologies.
To our foreign colleague, Mr. Scott Stanley, please go ahead and present the digitalization of the European Patent Office. Thank you.
Hi, I hope everybody can hear me okay. It's a real pleasure to be here to speak with you all today. I'm very impressed with the developments and transformation that everyone has shared today, and the intense efforts to making public administration, in particular IP, more user-friendly, more effective, more efficient. I'm going to try and share my presentation now. I hope you can all see it. Okay, so I'd like to just speak.
No, unfortunately, we do not see the presentation.
You don't see the presentation yet. Okay, 1 second. There we go.
We can see that.
Yeah. So I'd like to just shortly speak about, let's say, sorry, 3 things. The current tools that the EPO offer.
Это первый электронный сервис Европейского патентного ведомства.
The quality issues, and what I mean by that are how we ensure legal principles are
Нет, ничего не
respected
перевожу.
when we move to
Там
digital services,
есть последний перевод.
and then to talk a little bit about the future.
Также хотелось бы сконцентрировать внимание на качестве предоставляемых услуг. ЕПВ очень большое внимание уделяет качеству предоставляемых услуг, особенно в отношении уважения юридической определенности.
So the EPO has
Поэтому мы стараемся оказывать пользователям всяческое содействие на протяжении всего цикла предоставления услуг.
The EPO has three main filing tools. One is a software that you install on your own computer, which has very wide coverage, allows you to file national applications, European applications, and international applications, and can connect to your management software. It's a very powerful tool. But clearly the way forward is
Первый инструмент подачи является, безусловно, пользовательский интерфейс, который установлен непосредственно на вашем компьютере. С помощью этого программного обеспечения можно подать заявку в электронном виде.
We have two web-based tools at the moment. One is the new online filing, and then we have a redundancy system. So through these three tools, we allow applicants
Также помимо
electronically, however they need.
обеспечения мы предоставляем веб-форму для подачи электронной заявки. И у нас есть старая веб-форма подачи заявки на нашем веб-сайте. И также мы разработали сейчас новую форму онлайн-подачи через наш веб-сайт.
The EPO is also committed to sending its communications in an electronic form, not only to receiving them. And our service, the mailbox, is used for over 50% of all communications sent by the EPO, including in recently introduced opposition procedures, which are now sent via the mailbox as well.
Также ЕПВ большое внимание уделяет электронному взаимодействию с заявителями. Хотелось бы отметить, что электронное взаимодействие не ограничивается получением электронных копий документов от заявителя. Также мы рассматриваем варианты ведения переписки с заявителями, в том числе сейчас представлена новая функция по ведению переписки в отношении процедуры оппозиции, то есть возражения. И также управление, собственно, непосредственно самим делопроизводством и документооборотом в отношении производства по материалам заявки.
And finally, another place where applicants sometimes feel pain is in payments. So we have two very useful services. One is a bank account, which you may have with the EPO, which allows automatic payment of fees when they become due. And finally, credit card payment, which is a convenient, more modern approach that allows flexibility.
Также важным элементом, который интересует заявителей, является способы оплаты предоставляемых услуг. Мы в настоящее время ввели новую возможность оплаты при помощи кредитной карты, плюс на сайте ЕПВ есть функция интеграции своего банковского счета и возможность оплачивания непосредственно через портал ЕПВ всех предоставляемых услуг.
So I'm a lawyer, and what I'm interested in giving is maybe the legal considerations that are relevant when we move to digital services.
Как юрист, я хотел бы сконцентрировать свое внимание на юридических аспектах цифровизации.
And for us, one of the most important things is that the digital services are at least as good and at least as reliable as the paper world that we are used to.
Хотелось бы сразу отметить, что электронное взаимодействие, электронные документы и, в принципе, сам процесс цифровизации, по мнению как экспертов, так и заявителей, является не настолько хорошо укоренившимся и устоявшимся, как работа с бумажными носителями.
So to ensure this, the key measure is to make sure that the users of our tools are involved from a very early stage in the testing and the piloting and the direction taken in the tools that are built.
Поэтому, чтобы способствовать тому, чтобы наши пользователи и заявители могли уметь работать с инструментами, могли высказывать свое мнение в отношении работы инструментов. Очень важно проводить тестирование и давать пользователям возможность попробовать пилотные варианты программы для того, чтобы лучше вникнуть в принцип работы инструмента и повзаимодействовать с ведомством, если какие-то трудности все-таки возникнут. Этот принцип работы помогает нам приблизить разработку наших сервисов непосредственно к заявителю.
So to ensure that the users are involved, we have pilot programs that they may participate in, for example, on our new filing tool. And we have a number of forums where the users may ask questions or suggest developments or how the EPO can best suit their needs.
Для вовлечения пользователей и заявителей на сайте ЕПВ есть отдельная вкладка, в которой представлены все пилотные программы. Например, в настоящее время проводится вторая версия пилотной программы по инструменту онлайн-подачи заявки.
And it's also very important that we give very early information when we will make a change. In the paper world, you never think, do I need to use a new type of envelope to send my application? But in the digital world, you often need to check and be aware that you are using the right version of software.
Помимо этого, необходимо предоставлять своевременное информирование заявителей о вносимых изменениях. Например, в случае с бумажным носителем, заявителю необходимо убедиться, что он отправляет документы именно в той форме, в которой документы утверждены. И непосредственно обратить внимание на заполнение конверта, в котором данные документы будут отправляться. Также и в цифровом виде. Прежде чем начинать взаимодействие и отправку документов, пользователь должен убедиться, что версия его программного обеспечения является последней и соответствует используемому организацией.
So if we look then at some other legal elements that can protect the users, the main two principles are that there is legal certainty in what happens and that the tools give equivalent protection as the paper environment would.
Помимо этого, к качеству предоставляемых услуг мы относим правовую определенность и прозрачность как основные элементы качества. В этой связи хотелось бы отметить как минимум равные отношения, например, исходя из правила 127 Европейской патентной конвенции, что у заявителей должна быть равно одинаковая возможность предоставлять документы как на бумажном носителе, так и в электронном носителе без ущемления чьих-либо прав и свобод, а также возможности подачи заявки.
For example, the EPO, when it sends a letter by post or when it sends it electronically, assumes that it is received after 10 days. So there is an equality irrespective of which system you choose.
Помимо этого, ЕПВ также направляет уведомления обычной почтовой службой. Хотелось бы отметить, что обязательно должно быть подтверждение получения письма, и данный период получения подтверждения составляет 10 дней.
The other important aspect is what happens when things go wrong. So when a tool doesn't function like it should. And here we have a user-friendly approach that when one of the EPO's tools are broken or not working, then any deadline on that day is automatically extended.
Кроме того, необходимо рассматривать случаи, когда системы дают сбой или, например, внутренние серверы Европейского патентного ведомства не функционируют или находятся на запланированном обслуживании. В данном случае предусматривается автоматическое продление для осуществления юридически значимых действий, в том числе для оплаты пошлин, с учетом проводимых на сервере работ.
And this procedure is now also in the PCT due to the recent rule that 82 quarter that was added.
То есть ЕПВ предоставляет заявителю своего рода правовые гарантии в случае сбоев. Это предусмотрено правилом 134.1 Европейской патентной конвенции. А также были внесены изменения в правила PCT 82 Quarter 2.
So now I'd like to speak a little bit about the future. Under the Strategic Plan 2023, we have a key initiative, which is to further develop the online engagement with users.
Также хотелось бы отметить планы на будущее. В рамках планов на будущее у ЕПВ действует стратегический план до 2023 года. В рамках этого плана рассматривается цель номер 2, инициатива 3, разработка новой системы вовлечения онлайн-пользователей.
We also currently have a pilot which involves the filing of applications in docx format, so that there is structured data.
Онлайн-заявки в формате docx.
And this has the benefit of allowing structured data to be received. As one of the co-speakers mentioned, structured data is an excellent way to make our procedures more efficient.
Использование формата docx для подачи онлайн-заявки позволяет нам получать структурированные данные, что, безусловно, упрощает процесс работы с ними.
Two other future developments, and then is that we intend to extend our electronic communication to the users, to all users in all proceedings, hoping to reach someday 100% electronic communication with users.
Безусловно, нам хотелось бы когда-нибудь достигнуть 100% электронного взаимодействия с заявителями. В настоящее время ЕПВ проводит работу по цифровизации и старается предоставлять услуги как традиционно, так и в электронном виде. Мы работаем над разработкой новых средств авторизации, стараемся предоставлять и проводить процедуры посредством видеоконференций и других электронных средств связи. В этом плане стараемся соответствовать вектору цифровизации.
Спасибо огромное, Скотт. Спасибо.
Thank you, Jeff.
Благодарю вас за очень интересный доклад. И это действительно подтверждает то, что российская патентная ведомство движется в мировом тренде по
follows the global trend from the digitalization of its services to digitalization of its resources and processes. Actually, I have a question which I'd like to actually address the business representatives. There are two representatives of business present here, and I hope that next time we'll have more of them. Vladimir Demin and Sergei Dmitriev from Eurasia Digital Corporation and Rostelecom Public Limited Company. I'll be happy to hear from you. What do you think about the interaction between the state and the business, what we discussed? This is what we're actually moving in circles around. How do you see the expansion of the cross-platform approach, the expansion of the interdisciplinary approach, and how can it benefit from digital transformation of the Rospatent or the Russian Patent Agency? Anything you would like to advise us? What can help us to improve our efficiency and your efficiency? Vladimir, over to you. Thank you so much, Yury. Look, I would like very briefly tell you what business I'm dealing with. We are dealing with a big deal of teams which are developing software in the area of artificial intelligence and cryptocurrencies.
Такая острая тема.
This is a very popular topic which has nothing to do with what we're discussing now, but
Очень хочется
what is remarkable about that, what I would like to share with you,
мы не можем
is that
воспринимать нашу там
we
реальность в отрыве от
cannot
сегодняшнего контекста.
actually face the reality in detachment from the COVID-19 pandemic, and we have to work remotely, and we cannot be present at your conference offline.
Во-первых, непривычно,
And first of all, this is something we're not used to,
при этом
totally inhabitual,
дает
and
достаточно
it
интересные
creates very interesting opportunities.
Вот я там регулярно общаюсь
For instance, I work on a regular basis with people who, while sitting at home, generate various ideas, create applications, generate proposals, so they need to be in contact with other people. And this somebody can be located anywhere in the world, they can speak any language.
Поэтому удаленка, она
So, remote work
диктует определенный формат,
dictates a certain format of our work,
давая возможность.
while at the same time creating opportunities.
Я очень много в
And in view of this, I do place a lot of hope with patenting, because it is a means to protect
там инвестиций,
your investments
созданных продуктов.
and to protect the products that you create.
Сегодня
But unfortunately, today this does not work, at least with my business. Maybe you would help me to do this properly.
я специально перед этим мероприятием
Yeah, before this event, I asked my
свои команды на
my team
созданных решений.
what they knew about patenting existing solutions, and this is the response that I received. Patenting is very expensive and very complicated. It takes
Работу по
a lot of work to administer the process.
и самая важная вещь, которую
Second and most important thing that makes everybody aware of this is the a risk of disclosure. Andre here asks whether the code will be different if I adjust it a bit. And here the question is quite asymmetric. We don't want to provide this code at all to anybody for analysis, because somebody can steal it then.
Ну и третье, это то,
And third but not least,
вот эти разработки в области
all this development in the area of AI
сейчас, что
changed so quickly that there doesn't seem to be any
которую можно было
reliable link
запатентовать.
to be able to patent it. This is why today,
Кстати, очень умному
and that reminds me that
инструментов
tools
толку
in the IT sphere,
искусственный интеллект
including AI, have been growing quite actively, but this all is not patented at all.
это, конечно,
And this
ну, лично меня сильно напрягает.
is indeed really very tragic to me, because I hoped that would help.
Отметить. Это то, что
Another point I would like to make.
очень сильно меня, например, смущает использование
What worries me a lot is your concept of input substitution. I understand where this concept comes from, but today the world of IT and developing
о которых я вот
all these things I have just mentioned
возможен без
is impossible
очень широкой
without a
интеграции
broad integration, without broad interaction with various teams located
по любым частям света.
in any part of the world.
Как бы навязывать какую-то
This is why
разработку для использования для чего
forcing anybody to use any Russian-developed software,
использовать там как
for instance, use a particular software application for video conferences or for an administrative process would be simply impossible. This will break down any cooperation.
как бы сейчас вот все наше обсуждение,
This is why all our discussion at the moment,
но оно
clearly it is very correct, very good, but it only applies to Russia.
ровно в том, чтобы
Whereas if we want,
какую-то стену
well, if we want to build a wall between ourselves and the rest of the world, if we want to start developing things only inside the Russian state, then this clearly makes a lot of sense. Whereas if we're looking at it from a broader perspective, if we want to tap on new energy on new investments, on new money, on new liquidity, then
надо как-то пересмотреть
we should
процедуру
revise
патентования,
the patenting procedure
в сторону,
somehow
там, какой-то
to make it,
радикально большей простоты, ну и
much
точно
simpler.
пересматривать
And we need to
новое импортозамещение.
re-evaluate our
Вот,
attitude towards
такое
import
мое мнение.
substitution. This is what I have to say.
Владимир, спасибо. С
Vladimir, thank you very much. As regards import substitution, I clearly am ready to agree with you, but I do believe the potential of Russian companies and Russian developers who are going to patent their decisions with Rospatent much more active than this is happening at the moment. And then we'll see synergy between import substitution and patenting. But patenting indeed is a procedure which is a very difficult procedure throughout the world. But it is also related to a certain responsibility that the patent agency undertakes by issuing a protection document. Maybe sometime later, AI will come in place of expert assessment. But what can happen? We thought that sometimes expert assessment will be replaced by AI, and instead of thousands of experts that Rospatent currently employs, you could charge just one supercomputer with all these tasks. And this supercomputer will do everything for everybody. But even in this respect, even in terms of expert assessment, and even in this respect, there is no consensus, there is no agreement. To say nothing of creating a highly intellectual AI expert, a government expert, to be more precise, who would be on payroll of sorts. Oh, not a payroll, but maybe something that this expert will have to receive. So this is a question for a deeper analysis, and maybe for our next meeting. And by that time, maybe we will be able to tell you how we have been facing these challenges, solving these problems of simplifying the patenting procedure for business. Thank you very much, Vladimir, for this assessment and for your view. Sergey Dmitriev, question to you, a very concrete question. Rostelecom is our partner in the National Economy Program. We've been implementing this flagship program with us for the search platform. I'm sure that your company has a certain view, and definitely the view of business, of high-tech business, would be easier to understand and would be easier to find answers to these questions, to understand what business needs from what Rospatent is offering. Sergey, you have the floor.
Различных чиновников слова про цифру, про то, как меняются их ведомства, про то, как цифра все больше и больше занимает доминирующие позиции в делопроизводстве, в взаимодействии с гражданами.
Plays more and more role in how we interact with the residents, with the citizens. Surprisingly, we now find out that digital actually may make the workforce cheaper. In my opinion, actually, this is one of the opportunities to reduce the headcount, but the number of the workers has to increase. But really, along with the Rospatent, for more than 2 years that we are building an open platform for the access to the big data of the patent information through the search engines. This platform will help us to create the channels of access for other organizations to the data provided by Rospatent. As the way future, we see that actually it may give a lot of opportunities. Something what you are doing to the Moscow cluster, it would pose a lot of opportunities for the companies which offer services for the end users. What we are doing, this is a big infrastructural project, a big infrastructural platform which was deployed, but very often for the citizens, for the end users, for the inventors, for the academics and scientists, special services to seek for information are needed. And therefore, we may actually deploy the services which are needed, and therefore the small and medium-sized enterprises may take advantage of that, and other businesses and other clusters may take advantage of that. Speak about the future for Rospatent development. We see that as an aggregate of the whole information which is available there. As far as I understand, the Ministry for Industrial Development has it, and the same is true of the patent information and some data applicable to the information about the patent rights. We understand that it has to be aggregated within one single provider, and if Rospatent may do that, then it would be just actually the one-stop shop organization. But besides, as far actually we're discussing the digital transformation, what I'd like to draw attention to is that the digital transformation is just about the deployment of new digital solutions or new digital platforms, new techniques. But first and foremost, this is about the change in the mindset of the users, and we see the companies which position themselves as, for instance, we managed to change the colors, brands, etc., etc. But when we actually try to take advantage of the services of that service, nothing changes. And not only the ways of interaction have to change, and that way thinking, that mentality becomes more digital, because actually they understand what big data is about, how they analyze that, how they use that digital way in their activity. Besides, an important question is, as colleagues say, the process of protection of that object or that invention. Otherwise, actually, the information and the tools may be misused. We have to think about the following that. We have lots of data on intellectual property, and this is something which we have to protect. So I call on you and I invite you that colleagues, when they speak about digital transformation, they have to speak not only about the introduction of new products, but they have to think about changing of the mentality, of the mindset. That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sergey. This is something we also bear in mind. And usually this is what transformation is about. And finally, I'd like to pass the floor to Oleg Tichenko from Agro-Export Company. Oleg, as a person actually who is very knowledgeable about intellectual property and how it might be protected here and abroad, what do you think about the following? Are there any services, technological services, for the protection of rights of the Russian exporters abroad? Where is this niche we have to aim at? And probably Rospatent also has to deal with that as well. You are inaudible. Apologize. Can you hear me now? Yes, yes, we do. Well, thank you so much, dear colleagues. Really, the question connected to the protection and commercializing of the Russian exporters in the foreign markets, this is a very important question. Important in terms of digitalization of these processes. I would actually divide that into three parts. First of all, this would be about the legal protection, the protection of rights in the foreign markets. And number three, this is about the commercialization of these rights. Speaking about the legal protection, I will not repeat what's been already done by Rospatent and digitalization of the services connected to the patenting of the inventions, and this is what is being done by overseas patent agencies. But I will tell you about the defense industry solutions, the new service which we actually are about to offer along with APG. Trademark registration for the agricultural producers to protect their rights abroad is not enough. We see that our product is falsified, and this is not just about squatting or illegal use of our trademark, but sometimes the exterior of the product of our trademark is copied and replicated. What's an interesting digital service is being offered? So step number one, the so-called the reverse engineering of the agricultural product. So we take a product with a packaging and automatically actually can be split into the components of the IP components which it comprises of. Then we automatically select the regimen of maximum and minimum legal protection of certain elements and components in the exporting markets, including depositing of certain elements as the copyright items. And next step, this is about the monitoring of the rights infringements by the exporters. Very often we find that out just by accident, but the volume of infringement is huge. I will divide that into two parts: the monitoring of the infringements which are taking place at the exhibitions, fairs, in the real online shops, and to this end we are developing a software for our agricultural attaches which would help them to use their smartphones pressed against the goods to check whether it is a counterfeited one or this is a legal one. And the second type of monitoring, which is even more important, trade certainly now goes online with huge turnovers and lots of infringements there. The monitoring of the online infringements is very crucial. We fight against that, and to this end we have developed Keep Monitor product, a solution developed by Katkov and Partners company, which helps you online and 24/7, 365 do the monitoring of infringements online of trademarks, of the trademarks and the intellectual property items. Not only this software helps to check, but also to verify and to send necessary letters and claims to the hosts and to the patent agencies in order to put an end to the malicious websites which are trading the counterfeited products. And therefore, actually, prior to the court hearing, we may put an end to 90–95% of infringements. This way, actually, we can provide such a comprehensive protection of the trademark in all the jurisdictions and domain areas, zones. Few words about commercialization of the intellectual property items.
This is what, in my opinion, can be regarded as plans until 2030. what Rospatent has been creating, this solution on turnover rights, is a great breakthrough. But I wouldn't stop at that. I would continue improving the system. What can we do? Well, to start with, I would standardize information on IP rights proposed, on exclusive rights. No buyer would be reading a description of a patent in Russian, in particular if we're referring to export of rights. So we need a standardized type of information, a good packaging for our proposals. So a trade site of sorts where the product would be shown at its best. Two, speaking not of the Russian market alone, but of the international market for IP, we need to offer information about foreign patents to Russian right owners. This information should be offered at least in English, but also in other most widespread languages. And maybe last but not least, development steps. I remember that in one of the previous meetings where we discussed IP turnover, we discussed that clearly, in addition to introducing exclusive rights to IP results, we could also think about turnover of the derivatives from exclusive rights, such as utilitarian digital rights. In other words, we could create an exchange of intellectual property, of IP assets. This would involve a bigger number of potential buyers and potential sellers of such IP assets. So, in addition to those who would like to use IP assets in their business, we will also see a whole stratum of investors who are speculators in the good sense of this word, who would be ready to invest money in buying IP assets in order to resell them at the exchange and to gain profits from this. In my opinion, this could activate the IP property market in the midterm, and this could be set as a midterm task and could be considered such a task. So, briefly, this is what I have to say. Oleg, thank you very much. Yes, indeed, we could think about this approach to developing. We have not begun doing this yet, but we can think about doing this. Oleg, thank you very much for an outsider's view. It is very important to us. I think my colleagues also enjoyed listening to this. We have exceeded our agenda already, so I think we're going to be switched off the air quite quickly. I'd like to thank all of you. We have had a very fruitful discussion, I think. We have looked at this issue from various points of view. I would like to thank my colleagues very much for their valuable proposals, for a very important look at the pain points, and they are indeed points of pain. For your proposals, how to move forward, what other colleagues have mentioned, I think you also enjoyed because it was important for you to understand and to solve your tasks and to reach your aims. Thank you very much for attending this conference. I'm glad that this conference has taken place, and I hope to see all of you in the very near future, offline, face-to-face, in good health in the coming years. Thank you very much, and see you again. Bye-bye.
Коллеги, всем спасибо, всего доброго.
Спасибо, было здорово.
Спасибо огромное.
Спасибо огромное, дорогой. Спасибо, всего доброго. Настя, привет.